How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your February 2019 horoscope for Aquarius, Sun, and Rising. Thank you guys for watching and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I appreciate every single one of you guys. Aquarius, for one, happy birthday. It's like that time, that middle time, I guess, for you. Well, if it's not your birthday, also, Sun's in your first house. Congratulations. Maybe feeling a little bit more of yourself. This month is definitely going to be a little bit different than January was. January is probably a little bit hardcore, having that eclipse in your 12th house. As we have Venus going through your 12th house and we have Mercury and things starting to get piled up in Pisces here, the theme definitely changes away from what's kind of being repressed to a little bit more of like, hey, what's going on with money things and what's going on with, you know, your mindset, your subconscious, the whole 12th house stuff. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing that's really happening on starting February off is on February 3rd we have Venus going into Capricorn. So as Venus was in Sagittarius, your 11th house, it must have been good for, you know, networks, friendships, and, you know, enjoying those things, especially while Jupiter's there too. As Venus goes into Capricorn though, and she goes into your 12th house, this is when things kind of get a little bit of a different vibe. Venus being that planet of, you know, love, relationships, value, not separation, but I always think, I can never get this word right, but, you know, putting things together, basically. She wants to bring things together. She likes to synthesize things. And as Venus is in Capricorn, she really finds this value. She finds this beauty. She finds this art in the sense of structure, in the sense of discipline, in the sense of rules, in the sense of how things are supposed to go. And as Venus is going through Capricorn, she's going to be going through your 12th house, which is your repressed parts of yourself, unacknowledged parts of yourself, hidden things that could be blinding that you don't always see, things that aren't always really good. And so as Venus goes into Capricorn in this area, this is kind of going like, hey, what needs to be acknowledged? What needs to stop being repressed? And where do you need to realize where certain structures, certain rules, certain ways to discipline yourself don't serve you anymore? And where can you look to find more serving rules, more serving frameworks and structures around not only your sense of, you know, relationships and stuff, it's Venus, however, more of your sense of value, the way that you maintain yourself and the way that you kind of go about yourself. Now, the next thing that's happening on the next day, February 4th, we have the new moon in Aquarius, your new moon. So this is happening in your first house. This is kind of like, all right, you know, you had those eclipses in your 12th house. You realized what kind of needed to come alive, what's been repressed and unacknowledged. And this is the time to go, all right, like, you know, how do I need to detach myself away from the situation? How do I need to alienate myself from the situation? And how can I connect myself into something bigger? Something that's going to be more going to give you some more stability. That's going to give you some more sense of understanding. And that's going to give you the more healthier spirit to go about, you know, changing those things about yourself. So the new moon in Aquarius is just kind of giving you new intentions and giving you a fresh energy with your own sense of self, with your own persona, with your own personality. This is also be a good time to, you know, reset health things as well, because the first house is the body. However, the first house, new moon in Aquarius, can't get really too much more self-explanatory. Now, as we move forward, we jump about a week ahead. The next big thing that we have going on is on February 10th, we have Mercury going into Pisces. And so as Mercury leaves your first house where it's been easy for you to communicate, you know, that's been very natural to be able to more express yourself easier. Mercury's going to go into Pisces where Mercury, that planet of communication, of thought, of intellect, is going into your second house of money and finances and physical possessions and resources. Now, Mercury doesn't do well in Pisces. Mercury's in detriment in Pisces, where Mercury wants to communicate a clear, either written message or a very concise, you know, spoken word message. Mercury in Pisces kind of has to elaborate on the spot. Mercury in Pisces is kind of forced to not necessarily make things up at the spot, but say what needs to be said right then and there. And Mercury doesn't really do all that well because he can't exactly say the message that he wants to without, you know, either thinking about it a billion times or going over it or writing it down. And as Mercury's going through Pisces, this is going to be a different time, a weird time of kind of like, hey, what's going on with your money? What's going on with your finances? Things may not be exactly clear in that area. Things may be not necessarily miscommunicated yet. We'll be getting into that, but things are definitely going to be a little bit more unclear than normal. So as Mercury goes through Pisces, be a little bit more attentive to your finances, to how you spend your money, how many times are you swiping that debit card, because money's a Mercury game now. Like, it's all numbers on a screen. That's Mercury's game. So be wary of how things are really going in that area. And we'll be talking way more about that as we continue as well. However, a couple days later, as we go into February 13th, Mars conjoins Uranus. Now, Mars and Uranus are in your, what is that, your third house? So as Mars is this planet of severing, of cutting, of inflammating, he's bringing anger, but yet he's also bringing a lot of energy and a lot of power to things. He's been in your third house of communication, of also siblings, of your more immediate community and like short distance travel. As Mars has been in this area, it could be causing you some issues. However, Uranus is also at this last final degree of Aries. Mars is going to be there conjoining itself. And that really is a big story of like the Prometheus stealing the lightning from the gods. Like Mars on top of Uranus is expect a kind of kaboom, expect like, you know, a lot of energy being focused on liberating and breakthroughs and, you know, breakdowns, things of extreme nature. Mars on top of Uranus right here, it's going to be really, your sense of communication could be a little bit more volatile and maybe like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to do this. This is the way I'm feeling. This is how I'm going to handle these things. Maybe something unexpected happens with your siblings or someone, or maybe your neighbors or something like that. So pay attention to that. That is going to be a little bit of extreme nature. However, as we go into the next day, Valentine's Day, February 14th, Mars goes into Taurus. Mars is in detriment in Taurus. Mars doesn't act well in Taurus. You know, Mars wants to be in Aries or Scorpio where he has the energy, he has the drive, he has the commitment and the focus. Mars going into Taurus, Mars doesn't really move all that much in Taurus. It's a fixated sign. And this is going on in your fourth house of your family and your home life. And, you know, this could deal with your roommates. It actually deals with, like, your house. It deals with your parents and, you know, history or, like, your family lineage and things like that. So as Mars goes into Taurus in your fourth house, expect to have some problems in this area. Mars is, you know, is a malefic. He's definitely going to bring intensity to things, heat things up in a sense. But as Mars is in Taurus, it's hard for him to move. It's hard for him to take action. So it could be kind of a very stubborn time of like people aren't changing, you're not changing. Maybe your parents are very like, this is the way things need to be, or, you know, people in your living situation, like things need to be like this. Mars is just going to be causing some issues and some irritations in this area. And Mars is in Taurus is, even though it has to do with laziness, not taking initiative or action, the biggest thing with Mars and Taurus is take action on the things that bring value, that you actually value. And this is going to be a good time to really check your values because Mars and Taurus isn't going to do anything unless it really wants to. So really look at Mars and go, what is Mars and Taurus really wanting you to do? So make sure you guys look at that, pay attention to that. There is going to be a little bit of issues in that area. However, as we move forward on February 16th, we do have Venus sextiling Neptune. Not the biggest thing in the world. I mean, Neptune is in your second house where we do have, you know, things where we're talking about your money, your finances, physical possessions. Neptune in this area is just making things all kind of weird and blurry, you know, but also more of a spiritual nature. Venus sextiling Neptune is kind of like maybe some with Venus being in Capricorn, it's like, what do I need to do? What do I need to get addressed and fixed right now? This could be definitely like something out of nowhere. It kind of helps you with your finances. Something out of nowhere that you have been, because you've been disciplining yourself, because you've been following the rules and applying what you need to apply. Venus sextiling Neptune's like, okay, maybe more of that money area gets a little bit heightened. Maybe things start going a little bit better in that area. Not the biggest deal in the world, but it's just a very small mitigating minor aspect to kind of look at. However, the next day though, on February 16th, that is when Venus is going to conjoin Saturn in your 12th house. And this is a pretty big deal because Saturn is, you know, he's the ruler of your ascendant. So he's definitely bringing you some type of issues. He's bringing you restraints. You're very much ruled by Saturn. And as he's in your 12th house, this is really bringing up the things that just like you repressed, that you haven't acknowledged, that, you know, not everyone always sees everything about themselves. And as Saturn is going through this area, it's kind of like, man, the way that you've structured yourself and the framework that you've built yourself upon, you know, there's areas where it served you and there's areas where it just doesn't work anymore. And as Venus goes on top of Saturn, this is definitely like what really isn't working, what you're not enjoying anymore, what really needs to change, and how can you bring that sense of value and love in that area. This is Venus where she really values, like, I want to follow the rules. I want to do things right the first time because it's easier, it's more enjoyable. And as Venus goes on top of Saturn, this is definitely a way to look at if everything is not working, what's the first thing to do? What do you want to do first? What do you want to pursue first? If you're going to take the next step forward, what's your first step forward look like in the sense of bringing more love, bringing more of that? And I say love as in like self-love, as in self-care, as in where do you value yourself at? And so as Venus conjoins Saturn, it's definitely going to be more of a time. However, it is also time to go, where do you need to apply more of that, like, you know, TLC to yourself? You don't always have to be so hard on yourself. So then the next day on February 18th, this is kind of like the big day. Not really the big day. There's just more things happening on this day than any other day. That is, on February 18th, Mercury is going to conjoin Neptune, and it's going to enter shadow. So as Mercury conjoins Neptune, it's really speaking that message of Neptune. It's kind of like, what's going on with your finances and your resources? Are things clear in this area? Where do you need to have some definition and some, you know, duality to this? You know, how are things really looking? Things can be up in the air and foggy, so just make sure you're paying attention to that, because as Mercury conjoins Neptune, it's also going to go shadow. So Mercury's going to later station direct on top of Neptune again here in a few weeks. So this theme of what's going on with your money, what's going on with your finances, this is going to be a big thing to kind of look at for the next couple weeks, and we'll be talking probably more about that in March. However, the same day, Chiron goes into Aries, where Chiron goes into your third house. He's finally out of your second house of finances, money, and things like that, and he's going into the place of communication and siblings and your local environment, as well as short distance travel. I did a whole video about Chiron and Aries. Make sure you guys go check that out. That will definitely fill in the dots for you guys, or connect the dots. However, on the 18th as well, the sun goes into Pisces. So the sun being into Pisces, the sun is just, hey, this is what's going on right now. This is where the flashlight's pointed, where things are being aimed at. So the sun goes into Pisces, and we're going into your second house theme. This is a time for you to, like, all right, where are your finances at? What is your money looking like? What do you own? Do you want to buy things more? It's not the biggest deal in the world. It's just where more of the energy is kind of lying, in a sense. It's where the light is. Now, as we move forward into the next day, we have the full moon in Virgo on February 19th. This full moon in Virgo is going to be very interesting for you guys, because it is going to be happening in your 8th house. Now, as the sun's in Pisces and it's bringing light to this area, the full moon in Virgo is bringing another luminary, another light, another flashlight pointing light onto things and bringing your attention and awareness to things. This is the moon. It's bringing light to things that we don't always see. And this is your 8th house of other people's resources, other people's finances, taxes. It's, you know, we're getting close to tax season. Has to do with taxes, has to do with government, has to do with, you know, transformation. The 8th house is a very yucky place. However, this full moon in Virgo is definitely helping you realize, okay, where do I need to get my finances together for things like tax season, for things like, you know, or maybe the 8th house also rules your partner's money. So maybe, you know, while you're dealing with your money issues, something is going to be coming up and there's going to be more focus on your partner's issues, or your partner's finances, I should say. So as this full moon in Virgo happens, definitely look at the money area as far as, you know, things going with taxes and inheritances and debts. So it's going to be a big thing to look at. Mercury is also going to sextile Saturn on that day. So Saturn's giving you some support here, where Saturn's in your 12th house like, hey, don't let this limit you. Don't let this crumble you. How can you handle this in an efficient, effective way? How can you say what needs to be said at the right place at the right time? Like, be adaptable with your ideas. Be adaptable with your sense of change about how you can handle those things. Don't feel like you have to stay locked into one way of doing things. Now, a couple days later, as we move forward, Venus is going to conjoin Pluto here on the 22nd. Now, as Venus conjoins Pluto, Pluto's been in your 12th house, really grinding up things in that area of your subconscious mind and repressed hidden parts about yourself. Venus is going on top of Pluto, where this can be very much a reality hitting of like, hey, things aren't always great in this area, and there's things that do cause some pain and some problems, but how can I really find the value in this? Where can I really go? You know, even though this sucked, it's kind of like, you know, I like to think of fires, like, because I'm from California, so you have like a fire, there's fires all the time in Southern California, but for the most part, it can be good, because later on, if you have a fire in the summer, you get all of that rain and that water, it's messing all the soil up, and then you're going to get new life after that. Venus on top of Pluto is kind of like, yeah, sure, this devastation sucks, but new life's going to be coming. Venus on top of Pluto is like, I'm finding the value in this destruction, and that there's value that's going to be placed in this area. This is like planting new seeds in this time, in all of this ashy weather, in a sense. So on the same day, we have Mercury squaring Jupiter. And this is a big deal too, and we'll talk about this more next month, because Jupiter's in your 11th house, bringing you better friends, bringing you better alliances and networks and groups of people. And Mercury in your second house, in shadow, about to go retrograde, squaring Jupiter, where it's going to square Jupiter a couple times. You know, maybe things are kind of like a little bit misconstrued. Maybe your friends want you to do something and you maybe don't have the money for it. Mercury squaring Neptune is definitely going to be more of a this is what I have, versus your friends are kind of like, hey, this is what we want you to, this is kind of like where things are going versus what you have. What your opportunities are versus what you have. It's kind of like, oh, you have, for example, you have a really good job opportunity, a good job interview, but it's really high scale and you don't have the money for the clothes for the good interview, almost in a sense. I know that's kind of a weird analogy, but that's just going to show you the dynamic of there's really good opportunities going on right here, and even though this area is a little bit foggy, you've got to find a way to make it work. So then the last two things that we got going on in February is on February 25th, we have Venus on the South Node. As the South Node's in your 12th house, this is like, dude, this area of repressed parts, this area of, you know, this is Capricorn, this is like structures that aren't working right now. The South Node's going like, we need to get this taken care of. We need to move on from this. This is too much at the moment. And this is going to be going on for the next year and a half, especially as Saturn's still transiting that area. But as the South Node's in that area, like, what do you need to acknowledge? What do you need to stop repressing? And as Venus goes on top of the South Node, it's like, I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to look at this past and go, okay, this doesn't work anymore. I've got to find something that's going to work better for me. This is definitely also looking in the past and going, what has worked? And if I want to move on, how did I move on last time? What has worked for me in the past, and how can I utilize the structure of that and implement that system into your life right now? So that's going to look a lot of different ways for a lot of different people because it's South Node in the 12th house kind of stuff. However, that's mostly going to be the theme. And then the last thing that we have going on in February is Mercury sextiling Venus, where Venus in Capricorn, you know, she's wanting you to like, all right, like, let's put some TLC to yourself. This is helping Mercury get the message clear with like, hey, these are the tools that I have. These are the resources that I have available to me in order to make these kind of changes. And that's February for you guys. We'll talk way more about the Mercury retrograde stuff when he goes retrograde in March. However, February's looking pretty good for you guys. It's looking a little bit weird. It's looking a little bit better than what last month was. But if you take things one step at a time and just really let things come to you and reveal themselves to you, I think you guys will be good. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I'll be seeing you guys next month.